Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems again, and welcome back to MXGP Pro. Today I'm going to actually be playing on the Leon, Mexico GP track, do a little 15-minute plus one-lap moto, and apparently go off into the bushes in the 450 class. And the reason why I am doing this little 15-minute plus two-lap race is to kind of recap this past weekend's MXGP at Samarang in Indonesia, the MXGP of Asia as it was called. I've had some people request on the channel before that I do my weekly recap videos that I normally do for the AMA, Nationals, and Supercross about the GP scene. So I figured that was honestly a pretty good idea because I really do love and enjoy watching the GPs, and I feel like it's a series that, at least in the United States, really doesn't ever get enough credit for how good the racing is and how good all the riders that are over there are. Most of the time, American fans only seem to notice when it comes to the motocross nations. I think it's happened a little bit less lately. I think more people are paying attention to GPs now than used to in the United States. Maybe that's because of Ryan Villapoto racing, or maybe it's because Thomas Covington and Darian Sanai are racing in MX2 right now. I really don't know, but I would say that in general the interest in the series is usually pretty down for American fans. So I like to try to cover it when I can to say, hey, us American fans do enjoy GPs too, I promise. So yeah, I'll talk about Samarang, which, like I said, just happened this past weekend, the second Indonesian round of the year, but it was conveniently renamed to the MXGP of Asia so that it doesn't sound like they're in Indonesia again. It's a true world championship. They're not visiting the same place twice. So I'm going to start off by talking about in this video a comment I made in my last career mode gameplay video where I said I don't really like that they go to Indonesia in the MXGP series, and the reason why I say that is not really trying to knock Indonesia as a country or anything. I think that there is a market there for selling motorcycles, and Indonesian fans I think do really get behind the GP going there. But my point with it more was this is supposed to be the pinnacle of motocross racing, but 4 or 5 tracks every year, it really looks like they just go into a parking lot in some country and build a track, and that to me isn't motocross. That's just, if it's a world motocross championship, you have to go to legendary circuits, and if they're trying to make it not exclusive to Europe, it's not supposed to be a European championship, it's a world championship, then go to places where motocross is actually kind of a big deal, like Australia, or of course like the United States, or even places like Japan. I mean, Japan has 4 of the 7 manufacturers that take up the grid in an MXGP race with Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Kawasaki, and they don't even have a Japanese Grand Prix. And I'm sure that there's behind the scenes reasons why that happens, money issues or whatever, but I'm just saying, they don't even have an Austrian GP for KTM. They have a Swedish GP for Husqvarna, but Uddevalla comes and goes, it seems, because they're in the process of that track maybe being closed, is what I hear sometimes. But what I'm saying is, there's so many great tracks around the world that it's silly to me that they go and build a track in a parking lot. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily what happens in the Indonesian rounds, because I know that they've gone back to Pangkal Pinang 2 years in a row, and it seems like that's a permanent track. And I'm sure Samarang, which I guess was a new venue this weekend, this is the grand opening of it, that might turn into an actual motocross track. But I mean, they literally took a parking lot in Switzerland and turned it into a GP. I've never liked that they go to Qatar and race on a flat little tabletops only track right next to the Losail MotoGP track. I mean, it's really not necessarily Indonesia I'm picking on here. It's the fact that they go to these POS tracks, in my opinion, that don't really, highlight the true capabilities of what these guys are doing. And to me, it's not real motocross. So again, just wanted to clarify that so that you guys didn't feel like I was just hating on Indonesia. I'm not. I think that Indonesia has, a great fan base for motocross, and maybe their medical facilities could be a little bit more up to snuff. I read a story about a guy that broke both of his lower legs while at the GP in Pangkal Pinang this year, and he got horrendous medical treatment. And I mentioned it in that last video how they used to go to Thailand, and when a bunch of guys got heat exhaustion, they got just horrible medical treatment there too. And like I said, in a world championship, you just can't have that happening. So that's, like I said, what I just wanted to clear up real quick. But let's break it down into the GP this past weekend in Asia. I mean Indonesia, but it was the GP of Asia. And start by talking about the MXGP class, aka the 450 class, which, if you haven't been paying attention, is kind of a titanic changing of the guard duel this season. Multi-time, I think 8-time, if I'm not mistaken, world champion Antonio Cairoli, coming off of a world championship last year, has kind of been just flat out beat this year. I mean, he's obviously won quite a few races, but for the most part, second year in the class, Jeffrey Hurlings has been kind of whooping on him until Jeffrey Hurlings, while training a couple weekends ago, crashed, broke his collarbone. I believe he cracked a rib or two, had to go get his collarbone plated, and missed the GP in Ottobiano, which was in Italy. And Cairoli, I think, went 1-1 with the sweep there. And yeah, Cairoli did sweep that GP. Yeah, I'm trying to look at it at the same time I'm going off the track. He swept that GP, took a huge points gain out of Hurlings, but still did not take the points lead of the series. I think he was 68 down, or I'm sorry, 62 down, ended up 12 down. And then Hurlings, after a couple week break, was able to come back and race the MXGP at Pangkal Penang at Indonesia last weekend it was. And it was like kind of treacherous, muddy conditions. And somehow with a plated collarbone that he got plated 17 days prior and a couple cracked ribs, Hurlings went 2-1 and won the overall. And, you know, Cairoli went 1-2, so he didn't necessarily pull out any points in the championship from that. But I think that most people had assumed, okay, first race back, he's got a plated collarbone, probably going to get like 5th, if not worse, and Cairoli's going to be able to maybe sweep this weekend and keep it going. Turns out that didn't happen, and a big caveat here was that Cairoli actually crashed pretty hard late in the second moto at Pangkal Penang, and I'm pretty sure, again, could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he re-injured a thumb injury he had in that crash, and it's kind of re-aggravated. He had his hand covered in ice on the podium at Indonesia, and then this past weekend in Samarang didn't really look like the same Antonio Cairoli, and I think that it's just because he's, you know, kind of nursing that hand injury. He's going to get a couple week break here before they head back into Europe after this Asia trip, but that's kind of, you know, a bummer deal, because if he was able to kind of carry the momentum that he had from winning at his home GP with Hurlings out and maybe, you know, sneak a 1-1 away at Pangkal Penang, this championship really was going to shape up to be pretty interesting. But now with Hurlings, he went 1-1 this past weekend at Samarang, pulled out a nice, comfortable championship lead again. I think he's one whole moto distance ahead of Cairoli at this point, and that's tough. I mean, Hurlings' own worst enemy at this point is going to be himself, which he's proven is a very likely possibility. However, there's, you know, limited GPs remaining, and if Cairoli's going to be nursing an injury here for the next couple weeks, it's looking less and less likely that he's going to be able to take this all the way down and get his, maybe it's actually his 10th world title. I think he's a 9-time world champion. But in the other case of the scenario here, this would mean it would be the first world title for Hurlings, which I really do feel like is pretty much inevitable at this point. At least in the MXGP class here, he has 3 MX2 titles, of course. He's 3rd all-time on GP wins already, with so many GP wins in the 250 class, and obviously racking up quite a few in the 450 class already. But I mean, they're just the class of the field. Tim Geiser seemed to step it up a little bit more this weekend in Samarang, but I think, you know, he nursed a little bit of an injury at the beginning of the year, and he's kind of steadily been going. But I just don't see, like, I don't even see 2016 level Tim Geiser or 2015 level Roman Febvre being able to beat Jeffrey Hurlings, even with his injury right now. I mean, he's honestly, it looks like he's riding on a different track than those guys sometimes. It's incredible. And I mean, there's really not much more I can say about the MXGP class because it's been very straightforward. It's been a lot of Hurlings and Cairoli kind of swapping wins, but now with Cairoli maybe having a small injury he's nursing, and Hurling's obviously coming right back in where he left off after he got hurt. It's really tough to see someone else maybe sneaking in here and grabbing a win. We saw Desal got a win earlier in the year, but I mean, Geyser looked great this weekend and still just got caught and passed by Hurlings in the first moto and then just destroyed by him in the second moto. So it's kind of a KTM show in the 450 class, but switching to the 250 class, really not much different. The two KTM boys of Pauls Jonas and Jorge Prado are kind of putting on a show in the 250 class, and now Prado's kind of being dubbed as the next, young superstar, I feel like, coming out of Europe. Jonas is getting pretty close to the age out rule in the MX2 class, but he obviously won the world title last year and thus far has looked like he would repeat with the world title this year. However, he's had kind of a weird stretch lately where he hasn't won a GP since Great Britain. I think he was nursing an injury as well, but I can't remember what. And Prado's taken 3 of the last 4 GPs. Calvin Valandrin snuck in with a little sneaky win at Pengal Penang a week ago. But Prado's been kind of on fire. He was able to go 2-1 this past weekend at Samarang, win the GP after Jonas went 1-7. They're now tied atop the championship standings, which is incredible. But again, just that KTM dominance, man. Both of those guys, they seem to always get hole shots and run up front and win races. I mean, Valandrin and Covington and a couple other guys have started to get in there after the, as they hit this Asia trip a little bit and kind of open the door up a little bit more, I feel like, than what we've been seeing all year long. But it still seems like it's the Prado Jonas show as we go back to Europe to kind of wrap up the final stretch of the season. I think there's 7 GPs left, and they're tied. And I really don't know where this could go. I mean, Jonas, clearly he has the experience. He's 4 years older, I want to say, than Prado. And obviously has a world title in his back pocket already. So I think he knows kind of what he needs to get done. He's going to have a little bit of a break to kind of regroup after not the greatest second moto at Samarang, and maybe come out swinging again when they head back to Europe. But man, Prado's just been riding a wave of momentum, and he's looked really good doing it too. Like he didn't really have the speed I expected him to have in that first moto at Samarang, because like he and Jonas got together early in the race and Jonas fell, but I mean, it was Jonas's fault. He was leading and slid out. And then Jonas got up about 6 seconds down and just caught him and passed him and went on to win the race. Like, it just didn't seem like Prado had anything for him. But the second moto, Prado looked like, kind of a little bit more stronger. I believe Jonas didn't get that great of a start and then fell early as well, I believe. And then, just couldn't get going, it seems. Got a 7th, and that class right now, like I said, a couple other guys have started to step up. We're starting to see, Landon won the GP a week ago, but then Covington started winning races. Thomas Kjær-Olsen's always really good as well. Anthony Rodriguez has stepped in and started riding really well for Kemei Yamaha, but Ben Watson's also been doing a fantastic job for that team as well. So it's not looking as easy as it was for Jonas to maybe have a bad race and still end up on the podium. Like he had a bad race this weekend and finished 7th. So that kind of adds an extra variable to this whole championship dynamic with those two, where they can't afford to, have any sort of mishap. This is kind of a weird, like, side camera view on the helmet here. Coming back to center. I still don't really see anybody getting into the mix. I want to say it's Kjær-Olsen who's 3rd in the championship, and he's like 70 points down. I just don't see them clawing, like anybody, Kjær-Olsen or not, clawing their way back into this championship fight. Those guys have pretty well established themselves out front. But man, it's going to be super interesting to see where this goes. Like, I tend to lean towards the ideology that Prado's going to ride this momentum and start stealing more and more GP wins, and maybe he'll build up the championship lead over Jonas, and then Jonas will have to do the catching up at the end there. That's just how it's looked in these last 4 GPs. I'm not going to even suggest that Jonas couldn't win this world title, but it really has looked like the tide has turned a little bit, and Prado's been riding great, I think Jonas has really got to kind of, figure out the total package, because he's had quite a few of these weeks in succession where he's either really good in one moto and sucks in the other, or just mediocre in both. Sucks is a bad word. He's just not, up to snuff in one moto and great in another, or mediocre in both, as I said. And Prado's just kind of steadily clicked off podiums, wins here and there. I think he's won, I want to say 5 of the last 8 motos or so, or 4 of the last 8 motos. So he's, he's doing what he needs to do, and Jonas has got to respond. So I'm really curious to see what it looks like when the series heads back. I believe the next GP, I'm going to probably flub it up, but I believe it's the Czech Republic, the Locket round. I love that track. It's a beautiful circuit, lots of elevation, and so that's what I'm talking about. Those types of tracks, man. Those tracks are killer. Like, we need to have 19 or 20 of those types of tracks on the GP circuit. Sand tracks mixed in, of course. I'm not like suggesting that these guys just need to have perfectly tailored tracks or anything like that, but I just feel like they should have tracks that are real motocross tracks and not just a bunch of jumpy little parking lot jump type tracks. So, but yeah, GPs have been, like I said, just really good this year. This 250 title is so interesting because, with Luongo's age out rule, he's moved up quite a few guys that probably still would have a chance at winning the world title, like Benoit Paturel had to be forced out. Jeremy Seawer forced out. Valentin Guillot a couple years ago, but also forced out. And obviously, eventually, Jeffrey Hurling's forced out. But otherwise, the 250 class is pretty good, man. I wouldn't say that it's as deep as it used to be, but right till about 8th or 9th, that 250 class has pretty talented dudes, all guys that I feel like could at any point step up and be like, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy won the GP this weekend, kind of thing. So I'm liking where that series is at. It looks a little stupid when they do these flyaway races because the entries are so low. They get like 15 guys on the gate, but I mean, what's to be expected? It's a ridiculous amount of money to enter a GP as a wild card, and it's even more expensive to be living in Europe and be basically a privateer trying to race GPs and have to fly everything over to these 2 rounds in Indonesia. I mean, it's tough. Racing dirt bikes is not cheap if you're doing it pretty much on your own, which a lot of guys do. It's not like Formula One or MotoGP where there's like whole gigantic teams that flood with the, I mean, of course we have like Red Bull, KTM, Monster Energy Factory, Yamaha, like that's, top-notch stuff. They take like a whole hospitality unit with them, but I'm talking about for guys like a Jose Butron that's kind of more or less done it on his own for the past couple years, Silver Action KTM and stuff like that. A little bit tougher for them to travel to the other side of the world with all of their equipment and, turn up and not be absolutely drained of cash by the time they leave. But yeah. Looks like I am absolutely getting destroyed in this GP here at Leon. This track's actually pretty interesting to me because I feel like it's one of the few tracks in this game that they did a decent enough job at making it rough enough. Like, I feel like some of the tracks are a little highway-ish in this game. This track, though, you can really feel, I mean, I don't know how well you can see it on the video, but like playing it and feeling it, you can see there's quite a few bumps up and down the straightaways, in and out of corners. There's lots of chop and stuff. You really have to kind of, arc your corners right and land in some really sweet spots. It's a good challenge. I like it, at least. I think it's one of the more fun tracks in the game I've played so far, even though it's a flat parking lot track. They did a pretty good job of recreating it. Still haven't played some of the other tracks that I'd like to, like Locket, which of course I'll play for a little review video once they race it. And then don't think I've actually played one of the sand tracks yet, so I'm kind of curious to see what the sand feels like, whether it holds you down or not. And just continuing to kind of progress through this game, get a feel for it, decide what I like and don't like. So far, my, probably like 10 hours into playing reaction is that I do enjoy this game, and it's fun, and graphically looks outstanding. In first person, I feel like it looks really well. I think they need to clean up a little bit of the twitching that goes on, like the bars kind of have this like weird twitch effect going on most of the time. Not sure what the deal with that is, but otherwise I feel like first person gameplay looks great in this game. I mean, it's so smooth, so fluid. You have a real good sense of where the bike kind of is at all times, so it's not like you're ever lost, and I don't know, enjoying it so far. So I'll be able to kind of synopsize some more of my feelings as the career mode gameplays progress, but just doing a little bit of a recap of the Samarang GP of Asia this past weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, let me know in the comments what you think of the current MXGP scene and MX2 season and all that business and all the funsies that go on with Luongo and the gang as it is. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.